A very good evening, Guyana, and welcome to Alliance on the Move. Wherever you guys are joining us from, we covet your sharing of this program of Alliance on the Move. You guys know we run every weekend. It's particularly targeted to our Burbies audience, but it's a national program nonetheless. So, welcome to each and every one of you. We're going to talk the return to school and the COVID measures, the return to schooling in nursery, primary, and secondary, and the how the COVID measures are clashing with that. And we want to talk to you about the farmers' flood relief and the way it has been plagued with corruption. That being said, folks, let's head to our introduction so that we can start our program properly. Alliance in the Move. Folks, as you can see, I am privileged to be joined by Member of Parliament, Juretha Fernandes, and Juretha is also a member of the Public Accounts Committee, and we should be joined by Member of Parliament, Cathy Hughes, a little later on in the program. Juretha, welcome. How are you doing?
No, thank you, Sharon. I'm great. It's good to be here. It's always a pleasure to join the Alliance on the Move Burbies program. I love Burbies. I have so many friends there. And whenever I go there, it's just a different atmosphere, breath of fresh air altogether. So it's good to be here tonight.
Or as we say, Burbies just different. Burbies different.
Beautiful.
So good to have you. And you know, it's only looking at your complexion now. I'm realizing I'm so sunburnt. I don't know what's happening. But it says that we are on the ground and that we're working. Welcome again. So let's start our program on the fact that we've had that press conference, if you want to call it that, just yesterday, with ministry officials led by Priya Manik Chan, the installed Minister of Education. Julia, overarchingly, overall, what did you make of that press conference? Then we're going to get into the weeds.
It was chaotic. It was a mess. It was disappointing. I know a lot of persons joined the press conference seeking information, quality information, because parents are very concerned about what methods and mechanisms are going to be used and implemented for their children to go back to school. And the press conference just took on a different turn altogether, and it was highly political. I think at one point I heard your name being called in the press conference, and I wasn't sure what I was listening to anymore.
Thought that was interesting.
Right? So I believe, when I was looking at the press conference, oftentimes we see persons confusing their roles, and I think that was an example of that. We had the minister taking hold of a press conference that is supposed to be about the Ministry of Education and politicizing the majority of that press conference, which was completely unacceptable. And then the rhetoric that was put in, I know I was reading a comment shared in the press whilst the minister was speaking, and the persons that were logged on, listen, they were like, get to the point, answer the question, why are you going around the bush, because people are aware, the reporters are asking questions, they are looking for very direct answers, and at no point in time was there a clear answer given at any point in that press conference. So it was a total disaster altogether. We expect better. Our children are dependent on better to be given from this government, but as we have learned since this government has been installed, it's just getting worse, Sherrod. There's nothing getting better. Everything is just getting a bit worse.
One would have thought the installed minister would have deferred more to the technical people, the professional people on the ground who actually understand what they're talking about. But it seems as though Priya likes to hear her own voice. Part of what came out of the press conference, they said that there's now a 38-week curriculum or the rather the 38-week curriculum has been compressed into 20 weeks with careful attention to maintain the age appropriate skills children are supposed to have. Each child will start with the work they missed until they get that right before they move on to the next level. That will be repeated across the coming grades over the coming years. All teachers have either been trained or are being trained to deliver this curriculum. Do you think that we can get this right? It's such a condensed curriculum, even with the advent, with the advent, and might I add, the distraction of COVID. I know in yesterday's press conference, the minister expect, for instance, nursery and primary school children to go to school and employ all of the protocols for COVID-19, the social distancing, wearing a mask. And the minister didn't seem to be able to wear her mask for 2 hours, much more
We're
packing a
talking about
38-week curriculum in
we're
20.
talking about Sherry, we're talking about little kids. Let me tell you, and it's a very concerning, alarming issue altogether. When you were talking about a little 6-year-old going to school, and then you're asking them to wear a mask, a lot of times, I didn't hear the minister speak anything to actually having care packages distributed to these schools or so. But I don't know if I missed it, but I didn't hear anything spoken about that. But as I'm saying, when you have a little 6-year-old child, you tell them to wear a mask. A parent put that mask on the child. They go there, they can't keep it on all day. They take it off to get something to eat. It falls on the ground, then they got to pick it back up, put it back on. And you talk, it is it's complete chaos. Little children can't be expected to do that. I know there's a lot of talk in the press conference about them. I think for the nursery level having 5 students to one teacher. I think that was the ratio that they gave, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing is shared. Everything that I heard in the press conference was on the assumption that they would have enough teachers, and they keep saying, yes, we're going to have enough teachers to roll out this program as we are plotting it and as we have planned. But not once did they take into consideration that they are locking out the public servants out of their workplace if they're not vaccinated. So at no point in time were we given any statistic to say such and such percentage of teachers have been vaccinated. So based on this number, this is how many teachers we expect we're going to have into the school system when school open. There wasn't any real statistical analysis put forward, but we never hearing it. And I'm hearing them speak about this 4,000 students that have been children rather that have been tested positive for COVID-19 since COVID-19 started in Guyana. Now, Sharon, I don't know who's following the statistics and all of that, but at no point in time did this country ever have mass testing for children for COVID-19. So I personally questioned that bit of statistics that they're putting forward, because if you were to look at the data within the hospitals and so there wasn't a lot of children being recorded over time, so they just jumped to this whole 4,000, something that I question highly, especially the timing that they're bringing forward this data also.
Yeah, another thing that was said yesterday during the press conference, the installed minister said that this situation is very versatile, but we are certain that we missed a year at the term, and that's not easy to catch up in a year. We had a good opportunity to look and see if the curriculum was still relevant, and we found a lot of things that were repetitive. This year and the next 2 years, at least, we will use the consolidated curriculum to pick up on the learning which they lost. This will definitely be happening for the next 3 or 4 years. And even with that, the minister went on to laud what they call the best education system with the closure of schools, with the advent of COVID. She went on to say that other countries had asked to borrow some of the method that we would have employed. It was so good. She said it was the best. One wonders why, since it's the best, and we have now the advent of the Delta variant locally, why aren't we, staying at home and using this same best system? She outlined several areas: the online schooling, the television station, and the workbooks and all. It was the best. But yet we seem to be pushing very heavily to vaccinate our children, much to the parents being peeved and society at large. What do you make of this? It sounds like very, very contradictory to me.
Well, I had to. I smile. I even laugh at the fact that the minister said that was the best because in the very press conference, and I encourage persons listening to this program to go to the Ministry of Education's website and to view the press conference for yourselves. Oftentimes we ask that you don't take our words for what we just don't take our word for it. You just go back and you fact check what we're saying because it is going to give you, sometimes we don't even cover some of the things that you may pick up from that press conference, but the Ministry of Education website, the press conference is there from yesterday. And yesterday, what you're speaking about, Sherrod, the minister did say that she said she doesn't want to be modest. Guyana had the best response to the pandemic when it comes to the education system and what was rolled out. In the very press conference yesterday, the minister also said, Sherrod, that the vast majority of the students were not engaged over that period of time that the school were closed. So the same, look, I mean, at some point in time, I do wish that we were receiving better and we were getting better information, but the press conference was contradicting itself throughout from one point to the next. You can't be saying you had the best system, and in the same breath, you're saying that the vast majority of students did not have was not made, well, there was no contact from the school with
Hmm.
those children,
Hmm.
right? Also, at one point in the press conference, the minister is saying that when a reporter asks if they're going to desist from the online learning, she's saying no. And then moving forward, at coming down to the end of the press conference, the very minister is saying that we don't have the resources to do both in classroom and online learning
Yeah.
as are. So it's a very contradicting messages came out of that press conference. I think it was a big mess. I don't think that persons were informed like they were hoping to be informed, and I think persons are more confused after the
Yeah.
press conference than they went into the press conference.
MP Finance, I think that is one of the reasons why not only you, but I would say lots of Guyanese left that press conference very, very confused as to where are we exactly in relation to COVID and the reopening of schools. There were lots of comments that were shared during that press conference, and I want to quote a couple to you and get your reaction. For instance, I see a Raj TJ says that, Madam, you are making no sense because nursery school to grade 8 pupils will not be vaccinated. So you're talking about all these COVID protocols and so on that are in
No, I think
place.
that comment I followed that press conference very keenly because I'm a mother and I have two children that needs to that is in the school system in Guyana, and I don't like a lot of persons in government and so forth. I trust the public school system. I mean, from 2015 to 2020, I had absolute faith in the public school system. So I took my children out of primary school and I put them into the public school system. So now I sat down and I listened to that press conference because I want to know how these decisions are going to be impacting my children. And I didn't get anything. But that particular comment was made after the minister was saying that they have procured vaccines for all the children, and the persons in the comment section were questioning, how are you saying all the children, because these vaccines are just for the ages of 12 to 18, right? But then how are you saying you procure vaccines for all the children? So like I said, there's a lot of chaos.
Perhaps, perhaps she's giving us some insight into what's coming.
Well, I hope not. We have heard the Minister of Education is not a medical professional by no means, and I keep getting information about COVID and the pandemic vaccination and all these things. I try to get my information from medical experts, and the medical experts are saying that it's better when you have self immunized, when you're immune on your own without a vaccine. So to be asking people to put their children to take a vaccine right about now, when we're investing absolutely no resources into actually edifying and educating persons as to the effect of the vaccine, the benefits, or the disadvantages. I know a lot of persons, a lot of young women that are just married and all these things are even asking about if it's going to hamper their chances of getting pregnant and things like that. So it's a whole lot of questions and very little answers that are being given by the government. But I think one of the most important questions I was asked yesterday at the press conference is, what is the legal pathway?
I was
What?
coming there. I
Mhm.
was coming there. Yeah, yeah. Because
Go there, go there.
you did mention that there are lots of questions coming out of this press conference, and that's one of the things that underlined it. You had a press conference for over 2 hours, and when it was
Yeah.
concluded, persons were still no closer to having definitive answers. As a matter of fact, one of the panel members in the press conference was falling to sleep. That being said, one of the other comments to give context to where you were heading says, I love how she goes around and around and make us forget the actual question. The question had to do with what was the legal basis of these vaccinations and mandating vaccines and mandating that the teachers be vaccinated and even now the students. And so the comment was, I love how she goes around and around and around. And as you said earlier, and you were talking about exports, the installed minister seemed to have pronounced everything under the sun on the COVID-19 as an export, on the variants. But when it came to the legal question, where she's trained, she seems to have deferred to the Attorney General.
Yeah, because I think, and I appreciated that question a whole lot from the media house that brought the question, because we have had persons on the streets protesting against this whole imposition of vaccination, mandatory vaccination, the whole chant, slogan, your body, your choice, is so much out there right about now. This is not a Guyana thing. This is throughout the world. And at this point in time, the least I would expect is the persons that are implementing these policies that are mandating people to go and be vaccinated to actually have a ready done answer for you when it comes to the law that gives them that right to tell you, go and get vaccinated, or else you won't be permitted to work, or else you won't be permitted to come into the school. What is the law that you are basing these policies on? I think that is the first thing that they should have covered. So when the minister could not answer that question, I was shocked.
As a matter of fact, she said, I did not study this. I did not study this. She didn't want to pronouncing it inaccurately. And so she deferred to the installed Attorney General, Anil Nandala. But that being said, something I find very strange and worrisome during that press conference, MP Finance, is that the minister admitted that she found herself in the vicinity, in the building where the NGSA scripts were being marked. I saw the ministry put out a statement this morning that said that this is nothing strange. Rupert Roopnaraine would have gone and visit the site there as well during his tenure as Minister of Education when the NGSA was being written. The only thing is, Rupert Roopnaraine didn't have a child who had written the NGSA, and I'm hearing lots of persons who were involved in the marking. They have been reaching out to us and telling us that they found our presence there and interaction with fellow markers and also administrators here as very, very uncomfortable and very, very unprofessional. So how could somebody who is trained in law and bias and all of these things, in law, this is not just bias, but it's the appearance of it. What would the reasonable man, the ordinary man say? And that's why the law says you must shun this appearance of bias, right? This very appearance of going to this place where your daughter's scripts are being marked. Then you open yourself up for all kinds of accusations. And the minister cannot say, persons are attacking her unfairly, right? And listen to why she said yesterday in the press conference why she went there. To tell the markers that every mark counts and they must mark the scripts properly because of some very convoluted thing she tried to explain. And I think that was the longest answer and response The longest
Almost 20
period of the press
minutes.
conference is her defending why she was there at the NGSA marking site and her daughter being a candidate at this year's exam. Scripts were also there being marked.
Sharon, let me put it like this. For me, as a mother, as a woman in politics, and somebody who has children within the public school system, like I said earlier, um, once you get yourself involved in politics, you have to be very cognizant of the fact that your family is under scrutiny for every single thing. I think it was a horrible judgment on the part of the minister to find herself at that marking center, knowing fully well that she has a child writing the exam. And I will say this right now also that it was only until the minister said that in the press conference that I know that she had a child writing that exam, because I think the angle that she came at was that the opposition or members of parliament are trying to attack her child, and I for one can say that I did not even know until she said it yesterday. I did not even know she had a child writing the examination, and so I say that to say that is never, that level of gutter politics is not something I find myself involved in. It is not something I dish out at somebody. And because, as like I said, as a woman in politics, I have children of my own, and we all have children. We do not wish certain things to come back to it. But I think it is horrible, horrible on the part of the minister to
Horribly
know
bad
that she
judgment.
has a child, to know that she has a child writing the exam and then to find herself there, it is
Yeah.
stupid to say the
You
least.
you
We do not do things
yeah.
like that.
One would have thought that the minister could have entrusted that message to the chief education officer, any number of persons, to tell the examiners to be careful, be vigilant in their marking. But she went on to talk about close to half hour on just that aspect of defending her daughter, and seemed to think that the attacks
But
are unwarranted, right? Should and
but
that's why, yeah.
Sharon,
Go right ahead.
what one of the things that came out is because in that very lengthy explanation as to why she was there, she said a lot of things that I again left more questions than answers, because she was speaking to the fact that she was making claims that persons would have been marked unfairly before, and all sorts of allegations. So I wasn't surprised when I woke up this morning and I was seeing on social media some persons commenting that they believe that they were marked down in exams before, because the minister opened that Pandora's box. So now, based on everything that the minister said in that press conference yesterday, that 15 plus minutes of explaining that particular answer
Yeah,
for
yeah,
that very simple
yeah,
question, when
yeah.
I would not be surprised when the national grade 6 assessment results come out, if parents actually petition and say they don't believe that this is the grade that their child deserved, because the minister herself said that there were issues in the marking. And these are things that we need to be conscious of as leaders. You don't just go in wildly and say things like that. We all know that the teachers that are there marking, they put a lot of effort. They're into making sure that they mark fairly. At one point in time, the minister even said that persons' children were marked down just because of their age. And Sharon, I was like, at that point, I was lost. At
Yeah,
that point, I was lost.
and if that was the case, why are we only hearing about that now, and only under
Yes,
the context where the minister's presence at the National Grade 6 Assessment, I
it's
think they call it the
question.
marking center, is questioned.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem to be very trivial information at all, and that should have been brought to the public's attention immediately. But as I said before publicly, I wish every Guyanese parent had that opportunity to, when their child is writing the NGSE, to go to the markets and say, you all mark these papers properly, because every mark counts. These children got futures that we don't want to be there to be any miscarriage based on a mark or two. I wish every parent in this country had that opportunity.
That's all. I try not to get into too much of the debate with these top schools and so forth. Because I know at one point in the press conference, the minister used an example that um, the schools were not being students were not being awarded to the schools to meet the capacity of the school. I think she used Queen's College as an
Yeah.
example that
True.
that they
I think
were
I heard
there
that
was
too. Yes.
space for more, right?
Yeah.
And Sharon, listen to me. One of the things that I admired and I was very thankful under the coalition government is that their aim was to make sure that you don't have these one, two, three schools in Central Georgetown being recognized as a top school and just getting all the
Yeah.
resources. And efforts were put in place to make sure that these resources are distributed to all the regions so that persons with students do not have to travel to Queen's College, for example, to get a good education when it
Yeah.
comes to the secondary level. And so when I heard a press conference, it is kind of little, it's
Yeah.
crazy disappointing because it's like we have four step forward and now we're having about 10 step
Too
backwards. It's
many,
just like
one step too
it,
many backwards. And I even thought that I heard somewhere in there too, on that same point you're making. The minister said that, on that basis of these children being awarded the wrong marks, some questions weren't properly weighted and so on. I think she said at some point, too many students they found coming from Diamond going to Queen's College. Something of that nature I found very, very weird. But that being said, we have in the studio
I didn't
with us
understand that.
we have in the studio with us Member of Parliament Cathy Hughes. And folks who are now joining us, we want to welcome Cathy Hughes to the program. We have been discussing education and especially the press conference yesterday to deal with education. As Cathy, as you join us, we're picking up some news coming out of the Barbados Nation News. I think this is from Barbados Nation News, and I want to get your response in that context. Cathy, it says here that the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO, is recommending that countries in the region adopt a phased approach to reopening schools for face-to-face learning in the 2021-2022 academic year in the light of the COVID-19 pandemic. The article reads that PAHO Director Dr. Carissa Etienne says that this approach should take into consideration the local and epidemiological situation, rather, which she notes can change rapidly. Surveillance will be key in ensuring that the reopening is done safely and that learning environments remain safe, she said during the PAHO COVID-19 digital briefing, and this is on Wednesday gone. Your thoughts in light of the press conference and the reopening of schools locally on September 6th? Cathy?
Good evening to viewers, Sharad, my colleague Juretha. So good to be joining you all, although it's a little late. I think
We're
Paho,
happy to have you, nonetheless.
thank you. Thank you. I think Paho again is spot on. Why do I use the word again? Because you will know that PAHO is the international agency that first suggested that we probably had the variant here in Guyana. And of course, in typical style, we had pressure from the Minister of Health and the government saying to PAHO, prove to us that the variant is here. You will know that
Correct.
within the last 3 or 4 days, the minister is now suggesting that it could be here. And therefore, there are certain precautions that we need to make. So, PAHO is a very reputable regional organization. We know that they are part of WHO, the World Health Organization. And I think they're making a very pointed statement in that they're saying that, you could decide today that you want to open. Everybody wants to get back to normalcy. But the priority has to be the safety of our children. And therefore, if it is in that context, they're saying that you must look at your figures. You must keep abreast of how COVID is impacting on your country, on your communities, the vaccination rates, the non-vaccination rates. And therefore, I think they're right in saying that we have to look at our figures and to then decide how we're going to have it, and certainly a phased approach. Um, I know that for many, the press conference was a little disturbing, and I'm going based on the comments that you see on Facebook and also the comments as the live presentation was taking place. But I think what is important to note is that one good thing is that they are suggesting that the primary schools and the nurseries will start. And my hope is that they are going to do it in a phased approach. When it comes to secondary, it's a whole other kettle of fish, as they would say. So I think that more of the guidance we can take from PAHO, I definitely recommend them as an agency.
Yep. And on that note as well, both Cathy and Juretha, I remember yesterday during that press conference, and I'm trying to make a segue just after this to the other aspect of our discussion. The minister said there was a representative, I think, out of the UNICEF, I think it is, who was talking and recommending. I'll try to get my source correct in just a sec. The reopening of schools, recommending the reopening of school. And she went on to say that these folks are the gold standard where these pronouncements are made and should be followed. But in the same vein, I remember very clearly that it was the WHO who said to us that, for instance, the Sputnik V was not approved,
Mhm.
but we have gone ahead and used it nonetheless. And so it seems to me that we are using these gold standards as it suits our political interests. Your thoughts?
Give me just 1 second. Unfortunately, I have.
Jury, go right ahead. Jump in there if you can.
Sharon, Kathy was so correct when with her assessment or some with the PAHO recommendation, and I want to start from there because when we listen to the press conference and all the comments that are being made, the push for students in the secondary division ages 12 to 18 to be vaccinated, all those things go. It doesn't make rational sense if you were to think about it, because it gives the impression to persons that if you vaccinate these children and you send them to school, then everything is going to be all well and dandy, and that is definitely not the case, because they're not at in any point in time, they're not taking into consideration the fact that you may have a student that is vaccinated that is coming from a home with persons that are not vaccinated, and the spread. I don't think that the minister and all the all the persons in the government actually is ever addressing the fact that vaccination does not stop you from getting COVID-19.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, they speak to the vaccination as though this is the cure. When you are vaccinated, you can't contract COVID-19. That's not the case. So I can be at home. Let me just give an example of myself. I can be at home. I could be sick with COVID, and I have my child vaccinated, and I send my child to school. She's vaccinated, but then she's coming from a home with me, and I have COVID, and you can go and have that spread in the school system to pair, and the child in school take it home to their parents that can't be vaccinated if there's a pregnant person in the home. And I say that to say this is not no clear cut fix, and I don't appreciate the fact that the ministry wants us to believe and is selling this as though it is a fix. It is not a fix to the system. So all of this talk about if this child is not vaccinated, they should not be allowed to come to school. I think it's nonsense altogether. And the experts you have, Paho and everybody else will come out and they will speak about these things, because those those bodies actually consult with experts. They're not consulting with politicians on these matters. They're consulting with the experts, and the experts are saying this is the way in which we should do it. And that those are the guidelines. Those are the only guidelines that we should be taking, and we should be referring to um, as politicians altogether, because I am not a medical expert. None of us are. So
Mhm.
we refer to the bodies that actually take recommendations from a panel of medical experts when they are speaking to such matter. Who says do it in a phased approach, that is the way we should be going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Kathy, just before you jump in, I want to get the attribution right. This was the resident representative for UNICEF Guyana and Suriname, Mr. Nicholas Prawn, and the quotation attributed to him by the installed Minister of Education is that UNICEF welcomes physical reopening of schools in Guyana, and she went on to say that they are the gold standard in this business, but apparently the UN isn't the gold standard in and they're experts in this area of vaccines and so on, in telling us that the Sputnik V was not approved because they had some concerns.
Well, that's part of the challenge, huh? Because, we change our tune as we go ahead. And, recently this week, we saw a very important and worthwhile statement by Prime Minister Mia Mottley of Barbados. I don't know if yourself and Juretha mentioned that earlier in the
No.
program, but give credence where it is due. Mia Mottley actually stated that, look, we could get into all the legal challenges. Somebody challenges whether you take the vaccine, whether they could make it mandatory or not. But she said that for her government, they are not going to make it mandatory because that's not the spirit of how we live together. And I think that's an important fact that we're missing here in Guyana.
We have a different spirit here.
Well, true, exactly. And our spirit clearly is not about building unity,
Yeah.
which Mia was talking about.
And corridors of happiness and so on.
And exactly, and working together. So as she said, at the end of the day, she gave the example of her family. That you got somebody's Rasta that ain't believe because of religious reasons in taking a vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
You and I may have friends that are Jehovah Witnesses that don't take blood, that don't believe in vaccines of that nature also. We also have persons that have medical conditions. At the event, at the protest on Wednesday, I was speaking to an elderly woman, came up to me and said, look, I have sickle cell. I have not taken the vaccine because up to now, nobody can tell me what the implications of that would be. So I had to explain to her, look, I'm not a doctor. I'm not really equipped to speak on that. But this is what I think is one of the major problems with the campaign that we've had in Guyana. The campaign has depended heavily on the Minister of Health sitting against the same usual background that he uses every night to speak to the nation, a set of law books in the corner telling us what to do, what not to do, what they're going to do. And it is clear, we all know that once a people are forced into something, there's automatically resistance. And some of their reasons are very valid reasons. Imagine if we had a proper advertising campaign that spoke, that, for example, would touch and target the Rastas, the Jehovah Witnesses, the same lady that got the sickle cell and any other conditions, and give them real information, reassure them. Just like how we can do a drive-in for the vaccination. Can we do a couple of locations where we have 10 and 12 doctors just sitting there during the day? So anybody that has a concern could come in and speak to a doctor one-on-one, raise their private concerns. I have seen it happen in just small groups. And in most cases, the doctors are able to give the facts and say, look, as I believe, at the end of the day, it's your personal decision. And we would have been able to probably reassure people, convert a lot more people to vaccination than we are doing now. A forced approach does not build unity, does not build goodwill, does not have everybody working together. And, I do have to understand the plight of the healthcare workers that said, in the very worst times, we expected them to go turn up for work and look after COVID patients. And now we're making it difficult for them. Surely the government, at a minimum, could pay for those the COVID tests. If for whatever reason you have a healthcare worker who have worked beyond the call of duty, who have not gotten a increase in the last two budgets, couldn't you, just as a measure of goodwill, use those hundreds of thousands of dollars you're getting for COVID from international agencies? Use some of that to pay for the COVID tests for the nurses and doctors that don't want to take the vaccine for whatever
Yeah.
private reason. I want to
Kathy,
reiterate.
Kathy,
I
let,
want
let,
to reiterate, Sharon. I took the vaccine. Many of us took the vaccine.
correct.
We encourage it, but it is a personal decision, and I respect people's right to make their own personal decision.
Yeah, I wanted to go on to talk about the farmers' flood relief, but you mentioned something there, and I don't want to miss the moment. So I want to press on here for a minute longer. You talk about goodwill towards the nurses. Kathy, this is an administration who is constitutionally bound to meet with the leader of the opposition on certain issues and are refusing to do that. You think they got time with goodwill of the nurses who have been our heroes on the front line? If you're not even obeying what is lawful and legal,
Sharon,
huh?
you are absolutely correct, but you know me. I live in hope all
I
the
know you.
time. I live in hope all the time.
Looking for the best in everybody.
Up to now, Sharon, I really have one of the major beefs I have about this situation is the fact that when COVID started, we actually, and we were in government at that time, the APNU AFC coalition, and the APNU AFC coalition set up a task force that had everybody represented, private
Included
sector,
the
and of course, you will
opposition.
remember we went out of our way to invite the PPP to be on that
Yep.
task force. Now, why is that so important? Because for something like this, we need to be able to speak as one people. We say one nation with one destiny. If all the parties and all the civil societies and everybody were represented on that task force, we would have been able to get firsthand information on what we're doing. Do you realize that APNU AFC, who's who represents nearly 50% of the population, is get all the information on what's happening with COVID in the press like anybody else? Because you will remember that when we go to parliament to discuss it at the parliamentary level, it's not that important. It's
Yeah.
not
But
an
Kathy,
issue.
Sharon, I
Jump in
want
there,
to add
Juretha.
it.
Right ahead.
I want to add in on that part. The PP is naive to think that this matter of the vaccination, the mandatory vaccination, is a coalition issue. They are extremely naive to believe that this is a matter that transcends political boundaries in this country. When you're talking about people's health and their well-being, this is not about who supports the PPP or the PNC or the AFC. It doesn't work like that. And I have been seeing on social media comments coming from persons from every single region. It matters not where their political allegiance lies. They are against this forced vaccination. And I think that the approach that the PP is taking currently is to give the impression that, oh, it's the opposition supporters have an issue with this forced vaccination. That is far from the truth. We have reports of persons in every single region, all the hospitals, regardless of whether or not it is in the coalition stronghold or the PP stronghold, that is given strong resistance towards the vaccination. They believe that they're not properly informed and all of that. And I personally have my concern grows when I see that the nurses and doctors don't want to take it. If these are the medical experts and they're having second and third thoughts about taking this
You're
vaccine, how
hesitant.
they ask me to give it to my child. It's crazy, and the government needs to realize that this particular issue, if they do not find a way to have inclusive discussions on the matter, it is going to become very, very chaotic, more than it already is.
So, Sharad, that is a very, very important point that Juretha has made. And another point that I want to make is that we see in today's papers that they are also saying that the return is going to be almost like two different approaches, meaning that there still is going to be quite a bit of online learning that they're depending
They're
on.
making it up as they go along. Every day you hear something
But
new.
but they're talking about, we know everybody can't go back to the classroom. We know online learning is important, but yet you've done absolutely nothing. You've done very little and absolutely nothing in some specific areas to ensure more people in Guyana have access to online learning. And by that, I am saying in two areas: in giving internet access to more people. And this is where, as you know, there's technology whereby they could use that same e-government network that you are able to provide, that we provided free internet access to schools and all over. Use that network, have a portable Wi-Fi little, receiver. You could be giving those to all the children, especially poor people children that don't have internet at home. And through an e-government network, at certain times of the day, you would provide free internet when that device is turned on. And they would have mobile internet. And those kids would be able to learn online. The other thing that they've done nothing about, unless I missed it and I keep looking, have you heard of them giving out hundreds and thousands of devices? Because a lot of people, a lot of children still don't have a device.
Yeah.
One house might have one computer if they're lucky, or they might have one tablet. Mommy might have a phone, but when she goes to work, the phone goes with her.
Yeah.
So if you got two or three children in a house, in a household, you solved. So
Yeah.
you're
Well,
talking
Kat, you're
about
speaking.
this.
You're assuming that they care. You're assuming that
Well,
they care to have such
Yeah,
structure.
this
well,
big-hearted
I keep
nature,
telling
Kachi.
you, you know my
This
problem.
big-hearted nature.
I,
And
I live
that being
in
said,
hope. I live in hate.
I want to come back to something you mentioned earlier because I don't want it to slip because the comparisons are so stark. You said that we went out of our way as a government to include the opposition, the then opposition, on the task force. They refused to come. As a matter of fact, they set up their own parallel task force, said they had better people, better information. It is striking that we are where we are now on COVID
And they were
19.
in a mess for the first couple of
Right?
months.
Yeah. But the point I want to make is that you said we went out of our way. I would phrase it differently. I would say we did what any inclusive government would
As a,
have done, and
yeah,
what governments do in normal functioning societies. They
yeah,
work with the opposition. Look, just this afternoon, I'm looking at a New York Times documentary of the insurrection of the
yeah,
Capitol.
yeah.
All of that led by a Republican president, right? And Joe Biden, the current president, the Democratic president, still works with the Republican to move America forward. You understand why they're a first world country, and you understand why we are
Mature
still miles
democracy.
behind.
But
We are not behind. We are behind. You
Sha-
understand that, Kathy?
but Sharad, look at the cup last 2 days where we have that awful situation in Afghanistan.
Mhm.
And yet there are representatives from the American government that are still speaking with the Taliban up to today.
Yes.
There are folks within Afghanistan that are still members of the previous government that are still in conversation with the Taliban,
Yeah.
because you have to find a solution if you are interested in your people. And you
While
can't
while while
leave
while Irfan is
people.
stuck on call me legal government, while he's stuck
Yes,
there
yes.
on that
But
record.
he has not demonstrated that he is really interested in the people, because it don't matter. You don't have to like your Irfan and Joe don't have to like each other, right?
He wanted
They don't
bromance.
like each
Apparently,
other,
he little
but
weird.
they both are in key positions. And if they're working in the interest of Guyana, he would already have extended an invitation,
Yeah.
you know, to shut out people that have a
Yeah.
contribution to make on all the state boards and all those different things. I mean, what is that other than the beginnings of a dictatorship? That's
Yeah.
the reality.
Yeah. That being said, I see we're quickly approaching program time, but I just wanted to stick in. I note the leader of the opposition said yesterday that he's willing to meet with the president to discuss these national issues, but he is not prepared to go on his knees, recognizing that the PPP a little different. That being said, Cathy, we're following this rollout of the farmers flood relief and how it has been riddled and rife with corruption. Lots of persons, PPP supporters, are taking to social media and
Yeah.
saying that they know persons who never even plant a head of shallot, getting 100,000, 300,000, $500,000 in
Yeah.
flood relief grant, which is really and truly payback to their core supporters. Cathy, Juretha.
But Sharon,
Uh,
that is what we have seen since August of last year. I mean, they have been in they are incapable of distributing funds at a time when people need it in a fair and objective manner. Why is it each time, whether it was the COVID cash grant, whether it was the 19,000 for the school children, phase one of the cash grant, phase two of the cash grant. Each step of the way, we've had hundreds of people. It probably totals thousands of people that did not get. And why is it? After all those experiences, you come this time and you still ain't given to the right people.
Mhm.
And like you say, don't, if you're vexed with the opposition and you think we got to grouse, just look at the people. Look at the people that are reporting. Who is going to investigate that? When are we going to hear an announcement? Come to this location, and if you were deserving and didn't get it, we
Yeah.
are here and we're going to make sure that we give it to you. Have you heard that announcement?
Not as yet.
Did you
Coming
hear
soon.
you could go to Skeldon or Rose Hall or somewhere and they're going to have a table there and they're going to correct these injustices? Have you heard them say to
Yes.
people that say they have evidence or go to Facebook, please
Yeah.
call them
Yeah.
up and say, please give me your information so we can investigate.
Yeah.
We're
As a
sorry
matter of
this
fact,
has happened. You
as a
heard
matter of
the
fact,
apology?
a woman called me, Juretha and Cathy, from Kilcoy, Chesney, and she said they are the only. This is how she put it. We are the only black people here, and they passed our house straight. I went outside and asked them what's happening. They said we name not on the list. So she
Yeah,
asked them, how can I get my name on the list? And there was no response. They just gone on to
yeah,
everybody else. And
yeah.
this seems to be something that has replicated itself, as you said, Cathy, since this whole, these monies have started to share out a couple of months ago. Village after village, community after community. And let me just run through, just before Twitter jumps in here, some of the figures we have in terms of how the distribution went up as recent as last week. Region 114, these are the distribution, the farmers cash grant, flood relief. Region 114 farmers, Region 2 173 farmers, Region 3 112, Region 4 12 farmers. You mean Region 4 only got 12 farmers? And 3 from
Wow.
Region 4 came from somewhere close to Linden area there. Only 12 farmers in all of Region 4. Region 5, 1,145. Region 6, 1,083. Region 7, 19. Region 10, 67. Right? Region, yeah, to bring that to a total of 2,625. Economists, Juretha Fernandes, Member of Parliament.
Sharon, when you're talking about numbers and so forth there, and Kathy was speaking about the fact that basically that they never had a plan from the beginning since they took office, that they haven't had a plan. But I want persons to understand, and the very first the very first cash distribution we had was the COVID-19, that $25,000. Then they moved on from that, and they went to the Because We Care. Now they're dealing with this, and then they're going to go to the other one concerning persons with disabilities and so forth. Now the PPP has perfected the art of saying the right things and doing the complete opposite of what they say they're going to do. And I say that to say that the very first distribution when we had a 25,000 cash grant, they had persons fill out some pink slips and they said, oh, we're going to come back to you and we're going to rectify those who have not gotten. Those persons are yet to receive those monies. They shut that down. They're finished with that now. Those persons are never going to get those monies.
Yeah.
Then they move to the because we care, and they look at the way in which they're rolling it out. They never have any specific clear cut distribution mechanism for any of these things because that's the way they want it. It's not that they can't put a mechanisms in place, but they want it to be haphazard because then they can do whatever they want
Yeah.
with the monies. Now when you're at this particular way, when you come to the farmers and the $10 billion that came through the parliament in the supplementary budget to be given to the farmers, everybody that followed the budget debates would know that when we ask in parliament how these monies are going to be allocated, how they're going to be distributed, the prime minister answering in that regard could not answer because there was no plan on how they're going to distribute these money. So when you call that figure as 1,000 something persons actually getting money, when you go into the actual amount of money that they get, the vast majority of those persons, the persons that actually need the monies and the person that actually had significant losses due to the flood, they got a mere fraction of the losses, and there are persons that did not lose absolutely anything that are taking home big checks, and that is the nature of the PPP. That is how they manage the economy altogether. They're going to go, and I can tell you this based on my experience with them from the 25,000 COVID-19 cash grant. I I know based on that they're going to go to these farmers now that have grievances because they did not receive monies, and they're going to tell them, write your name down on this paper and we're going to come back to you and we're going to get this money. And I will remind those farmers of the $25,000 and the pink slip that were filled out. They never got back to you. They're saying that they're going to get back to you as a way of muzzling you so that you can't complain and you're going to feel some sort of satisfaction that they're doing something. They're not doing anything to get back to you. That is how they operate. And once we start calling the people out for these things, we're going to get so much farther ahead. Shared on that note, when we're talking about the PPP's management of resources, I think I even have to mention at this point in time, because this particular program is going to be aired in Barbies. I don't think I ever mentioned it on this program, but we all know that there's so much talk about the oil resources that is coming to our country and all of these things, but the same bad management of money and resources, again, now we have less than $100 billion in oil resources in our reserve, but yet the PPP has managed to borrow over $200 billion. Right?
Yeah.
So this is what is
Yeah.
going on, right? This is a
Yeah.
situation that they're putting us is they are
Yeah.
digging a humongous hole that even the oil resources, if you plug every cent of that money into it, cannot fill the amount of debt that they are putting this country in at the moment. And persons need to understand that.
Well,
I mean, I'm
they're
going to go in
hoping
depth
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
different program.
they're hoping that when it comes time to pay back that debt, they will be dead and gone, and so it will not be their concern. But as
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
hasten to program time, I wanna pick your brain on something else, guys. You know, as mothers, as wives, as citizens, the price of everything has gone up in the market. A head of boron and allium can trade for the same price. We know just yesterday, cooking gas is now equal to the uniform cash grant. A bottle of cooking gas is equal to the uniform cash grant. It's $4,000. Cooking gas used to be somewhere. It started at 2,700. It went up to 3,000. Then it staggered in between 3 and 3.5. Now it's $4,000. That being said, a gentleman shared with me on social media. He went to one of these malls recently. Children are getting set to go back to school on the 6th of September. A pack of colored pencil, Crayola pencil, colored pencil of 100 pencils in the case. It retails on Amazon for $9.99 US, $10 US. It is retailing locally for $11,000. Kathy,
Wow.
where are we going with this economy under
Wow.
the PPP? Where are we going?
it's and they like to say, I mean, every day you read the papers, there's every sector they're suggesting that there was disaster. But people, I want them to remember, it was under the APNU AFC administration in 2018 and 2019 and the beginning of 2020, halfway through 2020, you had agencies like the World Bank, the IMF, talking about how strong the economy was, that we were the fastest growing economy in the world. You remember all those different articles?
Yeah.
Everything has
Yeah.
now collapsed.
And growth was
That is
pegged
the
at
reality.
86%.
Yes.
And the International Transparency Index had us ranking the best ever.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we were
The good old
totally
days.
And,
under
and,
the
and
The
there were
good
no
old days of the good
and
life.
there were no aircrafts crashing with drugs,
Yeah.
right? And there were no
Yeah.
major shipments
Yeah.
to make us the one of the largest drug dealing drug finds in the world coming from Guyana. I mean, the economy is really in a mess, and this is where they want to fool people. But I know people are not stupid. These one-off gestures can meet to the fact that what is needed is an increase in the minimum wage, especially for private sector public servants. You know, you can give me a 15,000, but look at what APNU AFC did. The last increase was from close to 55,000 to 70 something thousand, and that was not a one-off increase. Every single month you were guaranteed more income. You understand? So
more
we get
disposable
fooled,
income.
we get fooled into thinking, well, oh, we get a 25,000. That 25,000 is only a month and a half of an increase that you would have gotten on the APNU AFC. And more people need to demand, with these high costs of living, an increase in the minimum wage across
Yeah.
the board.
Yeah. Folks, unfortunately, we have to leave it there. We're dealing with television time. I know we have so much more to say on this topic, but we're going to be back next week, same time, same place. Members of Parliament, Juretha Fernandes, who's also on the Public Accounts Committee that scrutinizes the public purse, the public spending, the government spending. Cathy Hughes, who is the vice chairperson of the Alliance for Change and also member of Parliament. Thanks for joining the program this afternoon, Alliance on the Move. Great to have you guys here with us.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you,
You stay
Sharon.
safe.
And people of Burby, stay safe.
Great.
Good night.